After her daughter gave birth, the midwife pulled Catherine aside from the delivery chair. Linda had worked at this maternity hospital for 40 years, but now her hands trembled as she removed her gloves. There was something in her eyes that made Catherine feel a chill before the first words were even spoken. Was it really your daughter who gave birth? The medic's voice was hoarse, as if she struggled to force each word out. Linda glanced at the ward where a young nurse was tending to the newborn, then looked back at Catherine. Yes, of course, mine. What's wrong? Catherine felt her heart begin to race. The midwife took her by the elbow and led her further down the quiet corridor. You need to contact the police immediately and find a good lawyer. Today. Her face was pale, and her gaze never left Catherine's, as if she were seeking confirmation for some terrible suspicion. Linda, I don't understand. What's happening? Is something wrong with the baby? Catherine tried to peek into the ward, but the midwife blocked her way. The baby is physically fine. But look at his right hand. Look closely. Catherine entered the ward and approached the changing table. The baby lay quietly, his tiny fingers curled into fists. The nurse gently opened the newborn's right hand, and Catherine saw something that made her world collapse. On the inner side of the wrist was a crescent-shaped birthmark. The exact same mark her husband Rick had, and his late father, whom she remembered from old photographs. A rare family trait that Rick had even been proud of, calling it the foster family mark. Her legs buckled. Catherine grabbed the edge of the changing table to keep from falling. Fragments of thoughts raced through her mind, refusing to form a coherent picture. This can't be true. It just can't. Mom. Chloe's weak voice made her turn. Her daughter lay on the hospital bed, turned toward the wall, not looking at the baby since the moment he had been born. Can I not hold him? I'm so tired. Catherine went to the bed and sat down beside her. Chloe looked exhausted, not just from childbirth. There was a pain in her eyes that couldn't be explained by physical suffering alone. Chloe, it's okay. You did well. You made it. Forgive me, Mom, Chloe whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I couldn't tell you. I wanted to, but I couldn't. You wouldn't have believed me. Her voice trembled with suppressed sobs. What are you talking about, sweetie? Catherine stroked her daughter's hair, though a wave of terror was already rising within her. She was beginning to understand what Chloe couldn't say. I told you it was just a fling with Patrick from the group, but that's not true, Mom. It's not true. Chloe buried her face in her hands. I was afraid you'd think I wanted it. Afraid you wouldn't believe me and would choose him. Catherine felt memories of the past months flood her mind, Chloe flinching when keys turned in the lock, avoiding being home alone with Rick, locking herself in her room when he came home drunk after meeting his friends. Mom, I didn't want to have this baby, Chloe continued in a whisper. But it was too late when I realized I was pregnant. And he said that if I told anyone, he'd kill you. Said he had friends who could hide your body so no one would find it. Memories struck like an avalanche. How Rick always asked what time Chloe would come home. How he offered her tea before bed that made her sleep so deeply she couldn't be awakened even by loud noises. How he insisted that Catherine visit her mother for the weekend, leaving them alone. He put something in my tea. Chloe turned to her mother. The pain in her eyes was unbearable. I'd wake up and realize something had been done, but I couldn't remember anything. I thought I was going crazy. Catherine stood, trembling, and staggered toward the exit. Linda tried to stop her, speaking urgently about the need to act immediately, but the words didn't register. Her ears were ringing, red circles swimming before her eyes. She reached the hospital entrance and stopped by the bushes. Her stomach knotted in spasm, and she vomited. Then her body shook again at the realization of the nightmare that had been happening under their roof, in their home. Rick, her husband for 5 years, the man she had trusted with her daughter, who helped Chloe with her studies, bought her gifts, played the role of a caring stepfather, had actually been abusing her own child, threatening murder. Catherine wiped her mouth with a trembling hand and tried to collect her thoughts. She had to act. Rick was waiting for her at home with flowers and champagne, ready to celebrate the birth of a grandson who was actually his son. She took out her phone, but her hands shook so violently that she couldn't press the buttons. One thought kept spinning in her mind: how could she not have noticed? How could she have been so blind? Her daughter had been suffering right beside her, and she had seen nothing. Linda came out of the hospital and approached her. "Catherine, you can't be alone right now, and you definitely can't go home to that man." The midwife spoke firmly, but her voice carried sympathy. "In 40 years of work, I've never seen anything like this. But I know for certain that you need to act immediately." "He'll kill us," Catherine whispered. "If he finds out we know, he'll kill us." Chloe had been right to be afraid to tell him. Catherine looked at the windows of the maternity ward. "My girl lived in this hell for 3 years, and I understood nothing. That's why they had to act quickly and correctly." Linda placed a hand on her shoulder. "I have a contact, a detective, a good man, a father of 3 daughters. He'll help you do everything the right way." Catherine nodded, unable to trust her own voice. Inside her, rage and despair battled. Rage at Rick for what he had done to Chloe, and rage at herself for failing to protect her own daughter. Catherine had been sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot for more than 2 hours. The keys lay on her lap, but she couldn't bring herself to start the engine. Every time she tried to imagine entering the house and seeing Rick, her hands shook even more. Fragments of her conversation with Chloe, Linda's words, and the image of the tiny birthmark swirled through her mind. The sun was already setting when a hospital security guard tapped on her window. An elderly man with a kind face leaned toward the glass and looked at her with concern. "Are you okay, miss? You've been sitting here a long time. Can I help with anything?" Catherine rolled down the window and tried to smile, but it came out as a pitiful grimace. "I'm fine, thank you. Just very tired." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. The guard nodded understandingly. "I have grandchildren too. I know how overwhelming it can be. But you have to go home, your family's waiting." He was right. Rick was probably already worried why she hadn't returned. Catherine started the car and slowly drove out of the parking lot. On the way home, she stopped at several traffic lights that had long since turned green. Other drivers honked, but she felt as if she were in a fog. One thought pulsed in her mind: how could she face him now, knowing what she knew? As she neared the house, she saw the lights on in the windows. Rick was home, waiting for her. Catherine parked and sat in the car for another minute, gathering her thoughts. She had to act normal, at least until she figured out what to do next. The door swung open the moment she touched the handle. Rick stood in the hallway with a huge bouquet of red roses and a bottle of champagne. A wide smile played on his face, his eyes shining with joy. "How's our little one? Everything went well? How's Chloe feeling?" He looked like the perfect family man, ready to celebrate the birth of a grandson. Everything's fine," Catherine replied, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. With difficulty, she forced the words out. "He's a healthy boy. Chloe's tired, but that's normal." She tried not to look him in the eyes, removing her jacket with shaking hands. Rick didn't notice, he was too excited by the news. "I've already chilled the champagne and got flowers for our mommy," he added, hugging her shoulders. Catherine barely restrained herself from recoiling. "Tomorrow morning we'll go to the hospital, properly congratulate Chloe. Maybe we'll buy a nice stroller or a crib. What do you think? I need a shower." "I'm very tired," Catherine said, freeing herself from his embrace and heading to the bathroom. "Let's talk about everything tomorrow." "I just can't today," Rick said, watching her with a puzzled look, but he didn't insist. In the bathroom, Catherine locked the door and turned on the water to drown out the sounds. Her hands shook as she dialed her sister's number. Wendy answered on the first ring. "Catherine, how are things? Has our Chloe given birth?" Joy and excitement were clear in her sister's voice. Catherine couldn't hold back her sobs. "Wendy, I'm in such grief, I don't know what to do." Tears poured down her face, words stuck in her throat. Her sister immediately sensed something was wrong. "Catherine, what happened? Is something wrong with the baby?" "With Chloe? The baby, he has a birthmark, just like Rick's," Catherine whispered, afraid he could hear through the door. "Exactly the same. And the midwife said we need to contact the police." Wendy was silent for several seconds, processing what she had heard. "Oh my God, Catherine, are you serious?" Yeah, her voice trembled with terror. "Where are you now? Are you at home with him?" "Yes, at home. He met me with flowers and champagne. Wants to go to the hospital tomorrow to congratulate Chloe." Catherine wiped her tears, but they kept flowing. "Wendy, I don't know how to act. I'm afraid he'll suspect something." There was a knock on the bathroom door. "Catherine, what, have you drowned in there? You've been sitting for half an hour. Who are you talking to? Come on, let's have dinner properly, celebrate the birth of our grandson." Rick's voice sounded irritated. "I'll be out in a minute, just taking a bath," Catherine shouted, covering the phone with her hand. Her sister spoke even quieter. "Catherine, you can't stay there. Come to me right now. Say I'm sick, anything." "I can't," Catherine replied. "He'll suspect. Chloe said he threatened to kill me if I told anyone." Catherine closed her eyes, trying to gather her thoughts. "I have to hold on at least until tomorrow, think about how to do this right." The knock repeated, this time more insistent. "Catherine, can you hear me? What the hell? Open the door. You're acting like a crazy person." There were threatening notes in Rick's voice that Catherine hadn't noticed before or didn't want to notice. "I have to end this call," she whispered into the phone. "Wendy, if I don't call by tomorrow morning, call the police." Her sister tried to argue, but Catherine had already hung up and hidden the phone in the towel cabinet. "I'm coming out," she called, quickly washing her face with cold water to hide the traces of tears. When she opened the door, Rick stood on the threshold, his face dark. "What's with the theatrics? And who were you talking to on the phone for half an hour?" "Wendy, I was telling her about the birth." Catherine tried to explain and pass him, but he blocked the way. She worried about Chloe, wanting details. Rick studied her face intently, as if trying to see if she was telling the truth. "Why are you so tearful? And why did it take you 3 hours to get home from the hospital?" He didn't take his eyes off her, and Catherine felt her insides tighten with fear. "I checked what time you left the hospital. The neighbor saw you sitting in the parking lot, just upset. It's hard to watch your daughter suffer." Catherine tried to make her voice calm. "Can I lie down? We have to get up early if we're going to the hospital." Rick looked at her suspiciously for a few more seconds, then stepped aside. They ate dinner in silence. Rick tried several times to start a conversation about the grandson, asking who the baby looked like. But Catherine answered in monosyllables. She feared that if she spoke more, she would give herself away. Every glance at her husband caused her physical pain. Pretending to fall asleep, Catherine lay still, breathing evenly, but she was actually watching Rick. He tossed and turned for a long time, muttering to himself, getting up several times to check his phone. There was something nervous, anxious in his behavior. Around midnight, he quietly got up and left the bedroom. Catherine heard him walking around the apartment, opening and closing cabinets, looking for something. Then she heard the sound of a number being dialed. "It's me," he said quietly, but in the night silence, every word was audible. "Yes, she gave birth today, but Catherine is acting strangely." Catherine strained to hear the rest of the conversation. "I don't know, Maybe the doctor said something or she figured it out herself. Rick's voice grew quieter. Remember our agreement. First her, then the girl. Leave no traces. Catherine's heart pounded wildly. She realized she had no time to think. Rick suspected something, and if he fully realized the secret was exposed, carrying out his threat would be easy. She had to act immediately. In the morning, Catherine woke to the sound of the front door closing. Rick had left for work without even saying goodbye. She lay still for a few more minutes, listening to the silence of the apartment. Then she got up quickly. Time was short. She had to find evidence while he was gone. Catherine started with his desk, rifling through documents and notes, nothing suspicious. Then she searched the bedroom, looked under the mattress, checked the nightstands. In the closet hung his work jacket, the very one he had come home in yesterday. Catherine felt the pockets and found something small and hard. A flash drive. An ordinary black flash drive with no identifying marks. With trembling hands, Catherine turned on the computer and inserted the flash drive. Several video files with dates from the last 3 months appeared on the screen. The first file was dated February. When the video loaded, Catherine clamped her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. On the screen was Chloe's bedroom, recorded by a hidden camera. The girl lay in a deep sleep, her face unnaturally relaxed. Rick entered the frame. What happened next made Catherine rush to the bathroom. She vomited until her stomach was completely empty. Her hands shook so violently that she could barely hold onto the sink. Now she understood why Chloe always woke up so sluggish after the tea Rick made. He had been slipping her sleeping pills and filming everything. Catherine returned to the computer and quickly copied all the files onto another flash drive. She put the original back in her jacket pocket. Rick must not suspect that she had found anything. She hid the copy in her makeup bag. These were pieces of evidence that left no room for doubt. The phone rang while she was still sitting at the computer, trying to regain her composure. It was Rick. "I'm leaving work early today," he said without greeting. "We need to pick up Chloe from the hospital today." There was nervousness in his voice. "But she still needs to stay there for a few more days," Catherine tried to speak calmly. "The doctor said at least 3 days of observation after childbirth." Rick snorted irritably. "Doctors say a lot of things, and then they start babbling where they shouldn't." "What are you talking about?" Catherine felt her heart start to race. Rick paused for a few seconds, as if weighing how much he could say. "I just think Chloe would be better at home under our supervision, and there's too much gossip in hospitals." After the conversation, Catherine realized she had very little time left. Rick suspected something or was afraid the truth would come out. She had to act immediately. Catherine got dressed and went to the hospital to warn Linda and take Chloe before Rick could arrive himself. The hospital was bustling with the usual daytime activity. Catherine went to the maternity ward and found Linda in the nurse's office. The midwife immediately saw from her face that something serious had happened. "Have you made a decision?" she asked quietly. "I have proof," Catherine said, taking the flash drive from her makeup bag with the video of what Rick had been doing to Chloe. He had been slipping her sleeping pills and filming everything. Linda paled even more than she had yesterday. "My God, so I was right. He's coming to pick up Chloe today. He says it's urgent, before the doctors say too much." Catherine spoke quickly, constantly glancing at the door. "I think he suspects we know something. We need to do something right now." Linda stood up and locked the office door. "Okay. I'll call a friend of mine, an investigator, and you go to Chloe. Warn her. But carefully, so as not to scare her even more." Catherine nodded and headed to the postpartum ward. Chloe was lying alone in her room, staring out the window. She didn't smile when she saw her mother, only turned her head. "Mom, I thought all night about what I told you yesterday. Do you hate me now? Her voice sounded hopeless. My sunshine, I don't hate you. I hate myself for not being able to protect you. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed and took her daughter's hand. But now we'll fix everything. I have proof of what he did to you, and we'll go to the police. Chloe sat up sharply. Mom, no, he'll kill us both. You don't understand. He didn't just threaten, he has friends who. She didn't finish, but Catherine understood. She had heard that phone conversation herself last night. Chloe, we can't stay silent anymore. Look at what this has led to. Catherine nodded toward the crib where the baby was sleeping. What will happen next? Chloe asked. He won't stop. And now we have one more person to protect. Fast footsteps and a familiar voice echoed in the hallway. Rick was talking to a nurse, demanding to be shown where Chloe was. I'm her stepfather. I have the right to visit, he said irritably. Which room is she in? Chloe heard his voice and began to tremble. Mom, he's here. I can't see him. Please don't let him in. She tried to hide under the blanket, but the door to the room had already opened. Rick entered with a bouquet of flowers and a wide smile, but when he saw Chloe's reaction, his face changed. The girl began screaming and thrashing in hysteria, pushing the air away with her hands as if defending herself from an invisible enemy. No, get him away. Don't let him near me. Chloe, what's wrong with you? Rick said, surprised. It's me, Rick. I came to congratulate you. He tried to step closer, but the girl screamed even louder. Nurses rushed in at the noise, trying to calm the new mother, but Chloe kept shouting. He shouldn't be here. Throw him out. Linda entered the room with a serious expression. She looked at Rick, then at the hysterically crying Chloe, and everything became clear. You need to leave, she said firmly. You're scaring the patient. What nonsense. I'm her stepfather. I have rights. Rick tried to push the midwife, but she didn't budge. You have no rights, Linda said, pulling a photograph from her pocket. Especially after what I know. The photo showed a baby's hand with a birthmark in the shape of a crescent. Rick looked at it, and his face turned white as chalk. Where did you get this? He whispered. It's a photograph of your son's newborn hand, Linda said calmly but firmly. The very child your stepdaughter gave birth to after you abused her. Rick lunged at the midwife and grabbed her by the throat. Shut up, you old fool. You know nothing. His eyes were wild with rage and fear. If you tell anyone, I'll kill you and your whole family. Catherine screamed and ran to the door. Help! Security! He's killing the doctor. Catherine's cries echoed down the corridor. Security guards and medical staff rushed into the room, but Rick continued choking Linda, repeating his threats. They pulled him away by force, but he kept shouting. It's all a lie. Chloe seduced me herself. She's depraved, like all women, and the child is proof of her corruption. The guards restrained him and led him to the exit, but he struggled, continuing to shout accusations. Linda sat on a chair, massaging her throat. Now we have witnesses to his threats, she said hoarsely. That will be enough along with the videos. Catherine nodded, still trembling from what she had seen. Chloe gradually calmed down, realizing that Rick could no longer reach her. Mom, now he will definitely kill us, she whispered. He won't forgive us for exposing him. No, my sunshine. Now he won't hurt anyone, Catherine hugged her daughter. He'll be put in prison, where he belongs. And we'll live in peace. An hour after the incident, a middle-aged man in plain clothes approached Catherine at the hospital. Oliver Brooks, he introduced himself, a local police officer. Linda told me about the situation. When he gave his name, Catherine shivered. You Oliver Brooks? The one who was friends with my Anthony? She asked skeptically. The officer smiled sadly. Yes, that's me. I remember your wedding with Anthony, Chloe's birth, and then his death in that accident. I never thought I'd meet you under these circumstances. Catherine took the flash drive from her makeup bag with trembling hands. Oliver, I have proof that Rick made videos of what he did to Chloe. I can't watch them, but they're there. The officer took the flash drive and carefully put it in his breast pocket. Catherine, I understand how hard this is for you, but these recordings are exactly what's needed for the case. What will happen now? Catherine asked. Rick threatened to kill us all if the truth comes out. He has friends. Last night he spoke to someone on the phone, making arrangements to leave no traces, Catherine said. Oliver frowned. We'll provide protection for you. For now, you cannot return home. You have somewhere to stay tonight. But I need to get my things from home, documents, Catherine said. Absolutely not, Oliver shook his head. I'll go myself and get everything you need. Give me the keys and a list of what's necessary. While Oliver went to their home, Catherine sat beside Chloe, holding her hand. Her daughter looked exhausted, but for the first time in a long while, hope appeared in her eyes. Mom, what if he finds a way to get out? What if his friends? Catherine stroked her hair. Don't think about that. Oliver is a good man. He was your father's friend. He will protect us. The officer returned 2 hours later with a large bag. I've collected your documents, clothes, everything essential, he said, setting the bag beside the bed. And I left a little something for Rick. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, a note with just 3 words. I know everything. Catherine imagined Rick coming home, seeing the empty closets, and finding that note. He would fly into a rage. Maybe provoking him like this wasn't a good idea? She thought. On the contrary, it was necessary. Oliver shook his head. When people like him realize they've been exposed, they start making mistakes. And we need his mistakes. The next day, an investigator came to see Chloe, a young woman with kind eyes and a calm voice. She patiently listened to the entire story, taking notes. Chloe spoke quietly, often pausing, but never leaving out details. It all started 3 years ago, when I turned 17. At first, he just came into my room without knocking, then he started complimenting me, saying how beautiful I was, Chloe said, staring out the window. Mom worked late, and we were often home alone. He said there was a special bond between us, that I understood him better than Mom did. The investigator nodded, continuing to take notes. When the coercion began, Chloe clenched her fists. Last year he started giving me tea with something in it. Afterward, I would fall into a deep sleep and remember nothing. But when I woke up, I could feel that something had happened, my body ached, my clothes were wrong. Why didn't you tell your mother? The investigator asked gently. Chloe turned to Catherine, tears in her eyes. He said if I told anyone, he'd kill Mom. He showed me photos of our house, said he knew when she came home from work, which route she took to the store, and then said he had friends who would help hide the body. Catherine felt her insides twist in pain. Her daughter had lived in this nightmare for 3 years, fearing for her mother's life. When did you realize you were pregnant? The investigator continued. Chloe covered her face with her hands. 4 months ago. I wanted to have an abortion, but it was too late. And he was happy, said that now we'd have a shared secret forever. That evening, Oliver called Catherine. Rick had arrived home. Neighbors reported hearing him yelling and breaking dishes. Then he left somewhere. We're keeping an eye on him, but for now, he hasn't done anything illegal, Oliver reported. Catherine sat at her sister Wendy's apartment, trying to calm herself. Catherine, maybe it's better if we all leave for somewhere far away? Wendy suggested, pouring tea. I have friends in another city. We could stay with them. Catherine shook her head. No, we need to see this through, or he'll always be looking for us. Around midnight, someone began knocking at Wendy's apartment door. At first quietly, then louder. Open up, I know you're in there. A familiar voice shouted. Somehow, Rick had learned her sister's address and came after them. Wendy quickly locked the door with all the locks and the chain. Catherine, come out, we'll talk like civilized people. Rick pounded his fists on the door. You're my wife, Chloe is my daughter, you are my women, and no one has the right to take you from me. Madness was evident in his voice. Wendy was already dialing the police when the door shook from a powerful blow. Rick was trying to break it down. If you don't open, I'll smash this filthy door. Then I'll find you all and show you what happens to traitors. Catherine grabbed Wendy's hand. Faster, call. He's about to break in. Her sister dialed the emergency number with trembling fingers. Police. A man is breaking in with a knife, threatening to kill us. She gave the address as Rick continued pounding on the door. I see the lights on. I know you're there. He shouted. Catherine, you destroyed our family. Chloe, a depraved girl, seduced me herself. And now you want to blame me. His voice grew more hysterical. Wendy locked herself in the bedroom, continuing to speak with the dispatcher, while Catherine stood by the door, listening to the ramblings of her ex-husband. The child is proof of her corruption. She wanted this, she asked me, and now she made up this story about coercion. Finally, sirens were heard. Police cars arrived at the building, and heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs. Stop! Hands up! The officers shouted. Rick tried to resist, but they quickly restrained him. It's all a lie. He shouted as they led him away in handcuffs. Chloe seduced me herself. She's depraved, like all women. The child proves she wanted this. His voice echoed through the building. Oliver came up to their apartment after Rick was taken away. Now he definitely won't get out, he said wearily. Threats, attempted break-in, resisting arrest, plus the videos and Chloe's testimony. That will be enough for a serious sentence. Catherine sank into the chair, feeling the tension of the past few days drain from her. So, it's over? She asked. Oliver nodded. Yes, Catherine. Now you can sleep peacefully. Rick won't hurt anyone else. The trial was held in a small courtroom at the district court. Catherine sat in the front row next to Chloe, who held her 3-month-old son. The young woman looked pale but determined. She was ready to see the case through to the end. Rick sat at the defendant's table, avoiding eye contact. Rick's lawyer, an elderly man with gray mustaches, began his speech by trying to discredit Chloe. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before you is a young woman attempting to shift responsibility for her actions onto an innocent man, he said, pointing at Chloe. My client claims she was coerced, but where is the evidence of this coercion? She lived in the same house with the defendant for 3 years. 3 years she had the opportunity to seek help, tell her mother, go to the police, the lawyer continued. But she did none of that. Why? Because there was no coercion. There was a consensual relationship between two adults. The prosecutor stood and objected. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have irrefutable evidence of what happened in the defendant's home. She held up a flash drive. Video recordings made by the defendant himself clearly show that the victim was unconscious during the crimes. As fragments of the videos were shown in the courtroom, several jurors looked away. On the screen, Chloe lay motionless, her eyes closed, breathing shallow. Rick, however, was fully conscious and clearly aware of his actions. As you can see, there can be no question of consent, said the prosecutor. The lawyer attempted to object. These recordings could be fake. Nowadays, technology allows. But the judge stopped him. The expert analysis confirmed the authenticity of the recordings. Proceed with witness questioning. Linda approached the stand. The midwife looked nervous but spoke clearly and confidently. In 40 years of working in the maternity ward, I've delivered thousands of babies. But I have never seen a case like this. When I saw the birthmark on the baby's arm, I immediately knew something was wrong. Tell us more about the birthmark, the prosecutor requested. Linda pulled out a photograph. The mark has a very distinctive crescent shape. Such birthmarks are extremely rare and are usually passed down the male line. When the child's mother told me that the father was her daughter's classmate, I was suspicious. What made you connect this mark to the defendant? The prosecutor continued. The midwife looked at Rick. I saw the exact same mark on his arm when he came to the hospital. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but then I realized coincidences like this don't happen. The lawyer tried to cast doubt on the midwife's testimony. You're not a geneticist. You have no right to draw such conclusions based on a birthmark. Linda replied calmly. I didn't draw conclusions. I simply pointed out the unusual coincidence to the mother and advised her to go to the police. The next witness was Chloe. She approached the stand, handing her child to her mother. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. It all started when I turned 17. Rick began to look at me differently, giving compliments, telling me I was beautiful. When did the coercion start? The prosecutor asked gently. Chloe took a deep breath. A year ago, he started giving me tea before bed. After it, I would fall asleep so deeply that I remembered nothing. But I would wake up in pain, realizing something had happened. Why didn't you tell your mother? Asked the prosecutor. Chloe looked at Catherine with tears in her eyes. He threatened to kill her, showed photos of our house, said he knew all her habits. He said he had friends who would help dispose of a body without a trace. The lawyer stood for cross-examination. You claim you don't remember what happened. But then how do you know you were coerced? The lawyer asked. Chloe clenched her fists. I would wake up in pain. The underwear would be wrong. Then I found a camera in my room. A camera? The lawyer asked in surprise. Chloe nodded. A small one, hidden in the bookshelf. I realized he was recording everything, and when I became pregnant, he said now we had a secret together forever. The prosecutor presented the video expert's report. The analysis showed that the victim was under the influence of strong sleeping drugs. Her reactions were slowed, pupils dilated, and coordination impaired. This rules out the possibility of conscious consent. They also presented the results of an analysis of Chloe's hair, which revealed traces of sleeping drugs. The concentration of the drug was enough to completely knock the victim unconscious, the expert explained. At this dosage, a person cannot control their actions. When it was time for the final statement, Rick stood and looked at the jurors. I'm not guilty of what happened. Chloe wanted it herself. She wasn't as innocent as she wants everyone to think. And the child, that's proof we had a relationship. His words provoked outrage in the courtroom. Chloe began to cry, and Catherine put her arm around her shoulders. The judge called for order. Defendant, your statements are inconsistent with the evidence presented. The video recordings clearly show that the victim was unconscious. The jurors retired to deliberate. Catherine and Chloe waited for the verdict in the courthouse hallway. Mom, what if they acquit him? Chloe whispered, rocking her son. That won't happen, Catherine said firmly. There's too much evidence. 2 hours later, the jurors returned. In the case of Rick Foster, we deliver the verdict, guilty. The foreman announced. On all counts, guilty of abuse of a minor, guilty of coercion into cohabitation, guilty of threats of murder. The judge pronounced the sentence. Considering the severity of the crime, the presence of aggravating circumstances, and the complete lack of remorse, the court sentences Rick Foster to 15 years in a maximum security prison. Rick went pale and swayed. When the guards approached him, he fainted. Medical staff attended to him. Chloe, for the first time in many months, smiled. Mom, is it over now? Yes, darling, it's over now. After the trial, Catherine began preparing the paperwork to adopt her grandson. I want to give him my first husband's last name, Miller, to erase any connection to Rick. Let the boy carry the name of a worthy man, she told the child services worker. Chloe supported the decision. I want Alex never to know the truth about his origins. Let him think his father died, like my dad. It's better than knowing the truth. Catherine agreed. Some secrets are better taken to the grave. 6 months later, Chloe applied to a pedagogical university. She wanted to become an elementary school teacher. I want to protect children, she explained to her mother. I want them to feel safe, like I never did. They moved to a new apartment on the other side of the city, a bright 3-room apartment with a large balcony. In the evenings, the three of them would sit there together, Catherine, Chloe, and little Alex. They watched the sunset and planned their future. One evening, Chloe picked up her son and quietly said, "My boy, my good boy." These were the first words of tenderness she had ever spoken to her child. Catherine realized, my daughter is beginning to heal. They are all beginning to heal.